Overdrive Hour number 2. Jim Tatti, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother manning the controls today, getting set for the Jays against the Reds, getting set for Marty Biron to join us very shortly to talk hockey on the Maple Toyota hotline. And I like the conversation with Eric Kratz, good baseball trade, Bichette for, and he had a starter out of Seattle. I like that. That'd be neat.
Yeah, it would be a nice little piece. Now, the thing is, the Blue Jays, not that they're set. You could always use more pitching, but pitching is not, I guess, where the holes are on this team, right? Gosman can rebound. You like what you saw last night out of Barrios and what you've seen the last couple of weeks. He had that little, halfway through the season, went on tilt, but he seems to be rounding back into form. We'll see with Bassett, I suppose.
Yeah. And he wasn't too upset about what Bassett said, which is interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about guys who shoot from the hip, right? They tell you exactly what you feel, and no malice from it,
no,
right?
And there wasn't anyone who said it, yeah.
And I think there was some clarification. A couple beat writers caught up with him yesterday, and he clarified a little bit what he was referring to. Just talked about the injuries and the age of the players. He's like, I'm not getting any younger. Gosman's not getting any younger. These are unfixable things for a team that wants to compete moving forward. So there was a little bit of clarification on that, which was nice, I guess. So you don't,
The one thing I will say, though,
as much, but
pitching has been good for a couple of years now. I mean, it's solid, but the moment you count on that is when it goes south. I mean, I wouldn't turn that deal down if you could do it, but obviously then there's a void in your batting lineup in other parts of the offense. So obviously you have to fill that, and they didn't seem too willing to add to it last winter, did they?
Well, that's the difficulty of the spot they're in right now, because if you go out and you tell the world that you're going to be contenders in 2025, and you clearly have an offensive problem, you're sort of
I think
in the
they're
dregs of the
27th
league.
in baseball this year.
You're in the dregs of the league in so many different offensive categories. You got a negative 80-something run differential. Pitching's not the biggest problem, but you probably can't have enough pitching, to your point, Tat, man. But how do you go about trading one of your best hitters, or a guy who at his best is one of your best hitters?
One of the best hitters in the league.
Yeah.
Proven it.
How do you go about doing that, trading a guy that is that good, when you're also out of the other side of your mouth saying, yeah, we're going to be contenders?
Well,
those two things have a hard time going together unless your haul in the Bichette deal is something that can help you in the here and now. And that is a tough move to kind of pull off, considering Bichette's coming off a down year and the Jays don't have a lot of leverage.
Well, and that only happens because you allowed the situation you're in to happen. They could have been way ahead of this.
Yeah.
And it's really their own fault, but for whatever that's worth.
Well, for sure it is. I mean, ideally, you would have locked them up a while ago, right? And at a number everybody was happy with, and you move forward with that. Now, it takes two to make a deal. Obviously, Bichette hasn't made a deal with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays haven't made a deal with Bichette. Bichette has expressed certain feelings this year that have made you believe that maybe he wouldn't feel so bad about taking his talents to another town. We'll see where it goes, but
I guess you want to ask yourself, well, what kind of money does he walk into? And it's going to be sizable.
Well, it's going to be sizable, but not nearly as sizable if this year would have gone well for him, right? I mean, but he does have another year before free agency to right the ship, so to speak, reestablish what he is and reestablish his market. So
he's going to. He goes to 17.58 next year.
Yeah.
So when he comes out of that, where do you think he's going to end up?
Well,
close to 30?
I mean, I don't think he's that high. He's not
25.
He's not a legit
stud
power hitter.
He could have
plays
numbers.
A premier position at shortstop.
Not particularly.
But do you see him as a long-term shortstop?
That's the thing. That's always been a big part of his narrative, right?
Yeah.
Is that can you really have him as a shortstop on a real winning team?
Now, him and his agent, I don't know who his agent is, but they obviously view him as a shortstop.
He views himself as a shortstop.
Exactly. And that's how they're going to negotiate, right? They're going to look and say, hey, this is what shortstops are being paid. This is what we think we're worth.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be a very difficult conversation to have. I mean, there's a reason why nothing got dealt with, I guess, last offseason. I'm sure that conversation came up. and they just couldn't come to an agreement.
And that's my thing.
So.
That's why we were having the conversation about will they trade him in the offseason. Well, if they were going to trade him in the offseason, to me, wouldn't it have been smarter to trade him at the deadline? Because then you're theoretically saying, hey, you get 2 playoff runs with this guy.
Yeah, the injury
1.
probably factored in there.
For sure.
Can you trade guys who are on IL, currently on IL?
You're right.
That might have been an
it's
issue,
obviously a factor.
But regardless,
and how much he can contribute to a playoff push at this point is up for debate, I guess.
All right, let's segue out of that. Joining us in the Maple Toyota hotline is Marty Biron. Marty, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. Just doing my what I love the most in the summertime. Get on the lawnmower and just spend like 4 hours cutting grass and putting the headphones on, and it's perfect.
Love it, Marty. Well, I want to start off with something that's kind of coming out of Vancouver right now. I'm curious, what's the panic level, you think? There was reports yesterday surfacing that Thatcher Demko might not be ready to go from camp, and then this morning, Marty, Ian Clark apparently has asked for a new role within the Canucks, assuming some sort of coaching and development role instead of a more day-to-day goalie coach role. And, he's one of the best coaches in the NHL at that position, Marty. You know that. How much will his presence be missed in those goalie meetings? Like, what do you think the temperature is today out in Vancouver hearing all this goalie news?
Look, coach movements, and Ian Clark, obviously, like you said, he's one of the best. But, we saw the same thing with the New York Rangers. Benny Allaire is not going to be day-to-day goalie coach anymore. He's just going to be kind of doing this thing as the goalie guru. But the ever-changing, positions at goalie coaches, I think most athletes, most goaltenders are used to it. It's very rare that you go through your whole career with the same goalie coaches, even if you're in the AHL or in juniors or in college or in Europe. Most of those guys, and I don't know specifically with Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, but most of those guys have their own personal goalie coaches that they work with in the summertime, that they even consult with in the season. So I know it gets a little complicated, but I'm not worried about that. I am worried that Thatcher Demko would not be ready for the start of the season because the Vancouver Canucks are a totally different team with him in the net and without him. And it's not that they don't, it's not that they give up more goals. They give up about the same amount of goals, but they don't score as many. And it just tells me one thing is that they worry much more about playing defensive hockey and limiting the chances when Thatcher Demko is not in net. And when Thatcher Demko is in the net, they say, okay, let's go out. Let's play the game. Let's be free. Let's score. He's going to make the saves back there. So that's where I'm worried about is that the Vancouver Canucks, I think, are one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the Western Conference right now with Thatcher Demko. Without him, it becomes very, very problematic.
Hey, Marty, we didn't get your take yet on the drama that went on between the Blues and the Oilers. When it all shook out, I mean, from where you're sitting, especially focusing on the Oilers, considering they were a team that was a game away, a win away from winning a Stanley Cup, how do you think it panned out for the Edmonton Oilers to lose both those guys by not matching the offer sheets sent their way by the St. Louis Blues?
Look, that's was an easy decision, I think, in the Philip Broberg situation. I mean, Stan Bowman wasn't going to spend $4.5 million a year for 2 years on Philip Broberg. He's probably a $1.5 to $2 million defenseman at most, right? So you're like, are we overpaying somebody by $3 million when we have Draisaitl coming up in a year, Evan Bouchard coming up, Connor McDavid in 2 years? No, you're not spending $3 more million that you don't have to. Holloway, I like the player. The player's a good player, and I think he'll be very good. But I almost feel like Stan Bowman's sending a message. And look, I'm not a GM, and I've never been a GM, but I think that would be something that, for me, I would take pride of saying, do you want to be here? And if Holloway goes out and his agent goes out and they negotiate a offer sheet with the St. Louis Blues, how much do you want to be here in Edmonton if you're willing to say, because those negotiations were happening. Don't tell me that the Oilers weren't going to pay at least $1.5 million, $1.6 million, $1.7 million, maybe when it's all said and done for Dylan Holloway, and then he gets 2.2 or whatever with the St. Louis Blues. It's not like a lot more money, but it's the principles, right? Do you want to be in Edmonton or do you want to be somewhere else? And if you go out and sign an offer sheet with the St. Louis Blues, it's almost like, okay, you're replaceable, right? The only unreplaceable players with the Oilers are McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and probably Stuart Skinner to a certain extent right now. So the Oilers are sending a message. You're all replaceable, which is not a bad thing. It's just a reality.
Marty, I get a little confused on the guys that are left. Swayman, Sider, Raymond, and Seth Jarvis. I mean, these four guys, I think you could predict what they're worth to their franchise. It would seem that there'd be little negotiation that they'd be willing to sign these four guys and move on because they're cornerstones of their franchises. Why are they still out there?
Well, I mean, this is big money we're talking about. And because Matty Beniers goes out and signs a 7-year deal at north of $7 million, you're Lucas Raymond, you're, Seth Jarvis, and you're looking at this and you're saying, well, we should be getting 8.5. I think that's a lot of money. Mo Sider, same thing. He's looking around. He says, okay, Darnell Nurse makes 9.5. Zach Werenski makes 9.5. Rasmus Dahlin is making 11. Owen Power signed for like Mo Sider is saying, I should be making $9 million, 9.5, $10 million. These are big contract type of money. So those are complicated, especially with the cap space that Carolina has, for example. Carolina has about $6.5 million in cap space. Yeah, they can go over in the summer, but, they have to be cap compliant by the start of the season. So if you go out and sign Seth Jarvis to $8 million a year, you're $1.5 million over, and that could be some problem. So I think that's why those guys are still out there. Not that the teams don't want them. It's just these are big, big contracts and long-term impact on your franchise.
Marty, I saw you put together a nice little power ranking of the starters in the Atlantic Division. I'm sure you know exactly where I'm going with this. You had Joseph Woll at number 7 out of the 8 starters in the Atlantic. Explain yourself, because there's a lot of people in this city that disagreed with that ranking.
Okay, well, first of all, people around Toronto and Maple Leafs fans should be happy that I'm saying Joseph Woll is the starter, because a lot of people are thinking, hey, Anthony Stolarz could come in and be the starter. And if you're a big Joe Woll fan, the fact that I say, hey, Joe Woll is your starter, that's a positive. That's a stepping in the right direction. I think the Atlantic Division is stacked when it comes to goaltenders. Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, Ullmark, Swayman. There's no denying those 4 are the top 4. After that, you look at the bottom 4, and I think Cam Talbot, even though he went to the All-Star game last year, the Detroit Red Wings, I'm going to put him 8 because I don't think there was much of a market for Talbot this year, and Detroit is not really sure what they're doing in that. They've got 4 goalies. They got Husso, they got Talbot, they got Campbell, they got Alex Lyon. They've got a big, busy crease right there, so I'm going to put him 8. So it leaves you Luukkonen in Buffalo, Montembeault in Montreal, and Woll in Toronto. Well, the experience factor. Luukkonen has played more than Joseph Woll, and really Luukkonen was excellent. He was top 5 in the second half of the season last year when you look at all the statistics in the NHL, especially the goals saved above expectation. And Montembeault has now been proven that he is a number 1 goaltender. So it's a process of elimination right now that leaves me with Woll at 7. But the fact that I think Joseph Woll is the starter for the Leafs, and the fact that I also said in the piece, in SportsCenter that, they could really elevate as the season goes. But right now, in August, I got to put him 7. I think I see some promise there, but I can't put him higher than that right now.
What do you make, Marty, of the fact that Swayman, as much as we all know the Boston Bruins need him badly, and he's right up there in your Atlantic Division goaltender rankings, he's yet to sign. Do you see any snafus there? What do you think is holding up the Bruins from getting that deal done?
Look, if I'm Jeremy Swayman, I'm not panicking right now, right? Like we're August. You get into September, your agent probably puts the squeeze on a little bit. The Boston Bruins have to get that done. What are you going to pay Jeremy Swayman? Knowing that Igor Shesterkin is probably going to be making $11.5 million next year, right? I'm thinking Shesterkin, probably the best goalie in the league with Bobrovsky right now, in my opinion. Hellebuck is in there. Swayman is in there. But we're talking about $11+ million probably for Shesterkin. So if you're Swayman and you're projecting Shesterkin what he is going to make, and then you also factor in that Swayman is younger, and if you go for 8-year deals, I think it's expensive. And the Boston Bruins are wanting to make sure that they can negotiate that. It's like buying a car, right? You know that's going to get done, but how much can you save? Even if you save $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year, that could go a long way managing your cap. So I think they're trying to squeeze every single dollar out of this negotiation when it comes to the Boston Bruins. But Jeremy Swayman will be signed and will be in training camp for Boston.
Okay, I got a fluffy question that may have an interesting answer. Marc-Andre Fleury has released his final mask design, and I think there's a couple of them for his last season. So what goes into a mask design, especially when this is it?
You know what? I was really bad as my design myself. I really trusted my artist, Eye Candy Air. They're actually out in Mississauga, and they were fantastic. They designed Tim Thomas when he had some painting on his helmet, mask, whatever. Cam Ward, Connor Hellebuck. They've done so many NHL goaltenders, but I would trust them, right? They did my mask in Philadelphia. And the painter, Steve, came up with this idea of my alter ego, right? A big, strong man, heavy beard that would like fly through the woods like a lumberjack, right? And so he's like, your alter ego is a lumberjack. And I thought it was funny. And it was a really, really popular mask. I loved it. When I went to the Rangers, I went maybe more conservative, and I went off my Rochester Americans mask from years ago, and I did a bit of a copy of that. So there's many different ways. Some guys are better than others when it comes to creation. Henrik Lundqvist was fantastic. He had a guy in Sweden, Dave Art, and Dave Art did a great job for him. So, I think there's a lot that comes into play. But again, I'm not an artist. I was a goalie. I stuff pucks for a living. I let the professionals do their work. And so Marc-Andre Fleury, maybe he had some input. Maybe he just let them do it. But I like to trust the pros at that.
Well, we'll stick with what's going on in the Atlantic Division here, Marty. Big trade that kind of shook things up the other day. Montreal Canadiens picking up Patrik Laine. What did you make of that deal? Can he resurrect his career in Montreal?
Yeah, I mean, Montreal is they're top heavy right now when you look at their forward groups. You look Caulfield, Suzuki, Safkowski. They have Kirby Dach, who missed most of last season with an injury, but I think Kirby Dach was looking really good with Montreal, and now they had Patrik Laine with Newhook. Like, that top six is really good. They're going to score goals, and they're going to play. I think Patrik Laine is going into Montreal with Marty St. Louis. What we saw the last year and a half, pretty much, maybe the last 2 years, was let's be high offense, and look, we're going to lick our wounds a little bit. We're going to make some mistakes, but we're going to score. Cole Caulfield has scored a lot of goals. So I really like that Patrik Laine addition. I was surprised. Don Waddell in Columbus said, we are not going to retain salary. We don't want to retain salary. I thought for sure Columbus was going to have to retain salary, and I think Columbus made out really good of being able to trade Patrik Laine and get what they got in return and not retaining any salary. So I think it was good for both teams. I think it's the best for Patrik Laine. And I would suggest if he plays like a full season, and I'm not saying all 82 games, I'm saying 75-plus games, right, that he's getting to 35 goals this year.
Marty, a little bit of unrest. Spent the bulk of the last two seasons down in Milwaukee in the AHL. Does not seem like he's particularly excited about going back to Milwaukee this season after the Predators just locked up Saros to a big deal. What do you make of the young man's trade request and his sort of, his refusal in some ways? I guess not refusal, but his the fact that he would rather not play in the minors any longer.
Yeah, so this goes completely against everything that I tried to do as an athlete when I played. It's basically shut up and work, right? Shut up and show up to camp, do everything you can. Who knows what's going to happen? Askarov could easily go to Nashville's camp and outplay Scott Wedgwood. And all of a sudden, Nashville and, Barry Trotz as the GM and Mitch Korn as the goalie guru over there are kind of looking at it and say, okay, well, we got to keep this guy. And really, like Askarov last year with Milwaukee in the playoffs, he didn't play every game. So I'm looking, there's still a lot for him to learn. But I go back to my third year with the Rochester Americans. I had a fantastic camp with the Buffalo Sabres. I was one of the last ones cut, like the last day. And I remember being so upset. I had like some choice words with Darcy Regier and Lindy Ruff, and I slammed the door. But I went down to Rochester and I worked my butt off, and I started the season 6-0 with like barely a 1 goals against average and like a .950 save percentage. And 6 games into the year, Buffalo was like, well, we got to call him up. We got to call him up. And then I stayed with the Sabres the whole season. Feschuk got injured, and I played like 35 games with Buffalo that year. That's what you got to do. You got to shut up. You got to show up. You got to work. And then if they were to say, Askarov, you're going to Milwaukee, then you let your agent work it out and say, you know what, we want to trade. But to do that in August is not the way I would do things.
Marty, thanks very much. And by the way, the Overdrive drone is now reporting in that you missed a spot on the lawn.
Yeah, you know what? That's because I got a big pothole left from a tree, so I'm trying to go around that and not hurt myself.
I wasn't wrong, was I?
Yeah.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking out for that drone next time for sure.
They show up when you least expect it.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.
You too, thank you. Marty Biron joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Fun guy. I like talking with him.
It's always great talking to Marty. And I'm with him on this Askarov situation. That's just not a good way to play your cards, right? Coming into camp.
I can say this now that I'm at 30. It's this generation.
Is that what it is?
This generation. I'm telling you.
Well, there is something
player
to that.
empowerment.
But people want,
True.
They know the money's there.
What's the situation
Because
in
it
Philly?
is. So why wouldn't you want it?
What was the situation in Philly with Cutter Gauthier?
Yeah.
Didn't want to play.
Yeah.
Forced his way out. Askarov doesn't like the situation. All right, I'm going to try and force my way out. You see it happen a lot in basketball. That's where it's most prevalent. You're seeing somewhat of this in the NFL with a lot of these wide receivers, seeing what, trying to scare their teams into giving them contracts or trade me type of situation. And you got some NHLers, some young NHLers who are trying to now kind of do some similar things. It's player empowerment of this generation.
Well, that's that coming out of the entry-level contract. I don't think that applies to the goaltender, but that's the flex point.
Well, that's the difference, though, Alice, brother. Like, in the NBA, when we're talking about player empowerment, we're actually talking about players who have power.
Yeah, star power. Yeah,
That's what I
the
mean.
Kevin Durant's of the world,
Yeah.
LeBron
I want to
James.
go here. Okay,
Yeah.
see him.
Yeah, like it's like Masai Ujiri said, players moving teams is the new free agency because
Right.
when players say they want to move teams generally move them because you don't want a disgruntled star around. You just want to move on and get something for them and find a solution. But this is a guy who is on, minimum salary, $925,000 cap hit if he plays in the NHL, an awful lot less if he plays in the AHL. To Marty's point, he hasn't proven himself even in the AHL. He wasn't even playing every game with his, American League team. So
Yeah.
like that's not player empowerment. That's just stupidity to me. Like it's asking for too much too soon, and it's also putting a label on yourself. You're a handful. You're a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
You're not a good worker. And I just feel like a guy at this, what is he? 22 years old. It's not a good introduction to the rest of the league.
I do see where he's looking at this new deal that UC Saros got. And he's like, this guy just signed for 8 years.
Yeah.
When is it going to be my time?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I could see it from that perspective, but keep it behind closed doors.
Right. I think Marty laid it out perfectly. What you do is you go there, you try and beat out Wedgwood for the backup spot.
Yeah.
Get your NHL salary coming into your bank account every 2 weeks. You know? Start there. Let's become an NHLer instead of an AHLer, which you've been for the past 2 seasons essentially, but for some spot duty. And so become an established NHL backup, then maybe start rattling the cage and say, I don't want to be a backup for the entire 8-year run of Saros's deal in Nashville. But to do it this way, it's just ass backwards.
Couple things on the way out. So in terms of salary cap space, Dallas with Harley, the Dallas Stars have 6.2. Carolina and Jarvis. Carolina has 6.44. Boston has, where did Boston go? Boston has, there it is, 8.6. And Detroit has 17.6, but there's 2 players, and both of those guys should soak up pretty close to that. Columbus sitting there with $16 million. But Don Waddell, I go, let's steal one of those guys.
Well, hey, Donnie's done it before, right? Don Waddell was part of that Carolina situation where
Kotkaniemi signing.
They got offer sheeted on Aho, and then they did the they
returned the favor.
The cheeky offer sheet on Kotkaniemi, which actually hasn't worked out too well.
No, it hasn't.
Point made.
I mean, I guess we'll debate this 2 years from now, but it appears that the Broberg might not work out as great either. Like, I mean, at least it seems like that was an overpay at the very least. Like, there's a reason why.
He's got to grow into that deal.
And
let's hope it's a big growth spurt.
And you could be saying a couple of years from now, like, why did they do this? Like right now we're saying, oh, good for them. But 2 years from now, if Broberg doesn't turn out and pan out into a top 4 guy, it's going to be, why did we do this? Now, a lot easier to give up a second-round pick than it was a first-round pick for Kotkaniemi. So, like, that makes some sense in that aspect. But, yeah, there's going to be some pressure on Broberg, a little bit on Holloway, but Broberg will have a lot of pressure, I think.
Cole Sillinger
expect a lot from him.
Sorry, Cole Sillinger re-signs with Columbus for $2.25. He's next. And on the way out, Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson has an arm soreness, held out of practice. Mike Wright will be by to talk some fantasy football and regular football at 6:30. This is Overdrive on TSN 4, streaming online, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. Overdrive, Jim Tatti, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star, and Al's brother with you, guiding you through until 7 o'clock. And pleased to have with us now the latest signing in the National Hockey League, Cole Sillinger from Columbus, 2-year, $2.25 per season deal. Cole, welcome, and congrats on the new contract.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's nice to get that done for sure. So thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. Again, congratulations on. But we've had a lot of offer sheets, people signed, and people that still aren't signed. What can you tell us to help us understand why some people are signed, or like why your contract happens today and maybe not earlier?
I mean, that's a good question. I think if you look at our situation as a team, as a group, as an organization, the Blue Jackets, we had some work to do this summer, obviously starting with hiring the GM and just the trickle-down effect to a coach, and obviously with the UFAs, RFAs, all that. And for mine just kind of worked out to be this is the best timing for it. And so I just stayed patient all summer. And, I mean, it's just good to get it done. I think it's perfect timing. And at the end of the day, it really didn't matter if it was done today, a couple weeks ago, or even in a week. Nothing really changes, right? We're not starting up hockey until camp starts. So as long as it didn't push through camp, I was all good with it.
So, Cole, you talked about it. There's been quite a bit of turnover off the ice over in Columbus. Got a new coach in Dean Evison. Don Waddell comes in now as the head honcho, as the manager down there. Obviously, last offseason, there was a little bit of a circus with the whole Mike Babcock situation. How excited are you kind of for a fresh slate with the team starting off clean with a new cast of characters going into the year?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think not only myself, but our whole entire group and our, entire team is very excited for that opportunity and to make a new impression for, in front of some new faces as well. So obviously both Don and Dean have been around the game of hockey for quite some time, and know what's going on. I know we're all very confident that they have a lot of the right answers and solutions for us to make stepping stones and to push ourselves in the right direction.
Hey, Cole, it's always good to see the son of a former NHLer doing well in the league. You were a first-round pick. Your dad, Mike, was also a first-round pick. But I was noticing one difference between the two of you. Your dad famously played for 12 different teams. I believe the longest he played for any one was in Columbus, where he played for 155 games. You're already past the 200-game mark in Columbus and now have signed an extension for a couple more years. What do you make of that your dad was a suitcase and you are the picture of stability?
Yeah, we give him a hard time. His argument would be that everyone wanted him. So we always have some good laughs about that. But yeah, I love the city of Columbus. I'm very fortunate for the opportunity and very thankful to be playing there for the last couple of years, and excited for 2 more and hopefully a lot more after that.
I have to ask you about the cannon. When Columbus scores a goal, the I guess it'd be the Civil War cannon that gets fired. Is there a good cannon story? I'm sure you're used to it now and want to get more used to it. But when you first heard that, what was that like?
I was pretty prepared for it, honestly. We had it going in our pre-tournament and all that as well. So that's when I got used to it. But when we signed Johnny a couple of years ago, I know he was pretty scared of it. So. We have some good laughs about that as well.
Cole, well, congrats on the big new deal. Just curious, what's the first big purchase for you now that you got a little dough in the bag? Thought about it?
I haven't thought about it. I don't think anything. It's not really my personality to go out and make a good purchase. Just continue to live the life that I kind of want to live and take care of my brothers and my family, and that's about it.
That sounds good. I mean, Cole, when you look at this Columbus team, obviously there's been some tough times, and obviously you move away from a guy like Patrik Laine, who's headed off to Montreal. There's maybe a new energy in camp coming up. Like, what sort of gives you the idea that you guys are on the right track and you want to be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think it just started from hiring Don and the changes he made, and hiring Dean. Like I said earlier, 2 very experienced guys, and guys that know a lot about culture. And obviously, Don kind of created that culture there in Carolina, and hoping to do the same here in Columbus. I think when you look at our group, we have a lot of pieces of the puzzle. It's just a matter of putting that puzzle together and building more chemistry with each other and getting on the same page. And I think with our off-season moves, we did that. And I know all of us are very excited to get the ball rolling. It's one thing to keep talking about it and to keep saying that we're in the right direction. For our group, it's time to go show it and, let her play and let how we approach games do the talking versus just, saying that we want to do something.
Cool. The Jackets, you mentioned it. They've built up a lot of depth over the offseason. I think, expected to be some good competition within that top 9 this year for you guys in camp. What have you been working on this summer to give yourself the best opportunity to compete for a larger role?
Yeah, I think the game is always evolving. It's always changing, and for me, I kind of have that mentality as well, right? To try to, change something or add something to both on ice and off ice to help try to give myself an advantage. And for me, making sure the body feels right, staying healthy, and putting an emphasis on speed, power, agility, quickness. I know all that kind of cliche stuff that everyone says, but seriously, a lot of on ice specifics, a lot of skill work. Just maybe looking back on some of the areas where I've had the puck, a little more in the offensive zone, and just putting an emphasis on some execution that I could have done a little differently in those types of situations. So more so kind of a broad answer, but a little bit of everything.
Let's look back once more before we let you go, Cole. When you look back to last year, I mean, that was a tough season for the franchise, and you battling through that. What did you learn? What did you add to your resume by going through that and persevering?
I think it's the mental game. Honestly, I think that goes into it quite a bit. And the year prior, I didn't have the best year, and that's maybe where I slipped the most. Was mentally, and didn't really know how to deal with situations. And we come back next year, or the following year, which was last year, and we still had some injuries to the group, and still some things going on. But just mentally, maybe looking at things in a different perspective, or a more meaningful or constructive perspective, versus maybe looking at the bad of a situation, or things like that. So I think that allows you to persevere a little bit more, and maybe makes you feel like you have less weight on your shoulders, and can just go do what we love, and that's play the game of hockey.
Cole, again, congratulations on the deal. Thanks for cutting us in on an August afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Our pleasure. Cole Sillinger re-signing with Columbus, 2 years, $2.25 each year. Unresolved for the Jackets, as Elvis wanted to leave the building, and he's still there.
There you go.
I don't know what they're going to do with that situation. I know they tried to move him at the deadline, and there wasn't a taker. And I think he's got another year or two left on that deal, if I'm not mistaken.
That's three.
Three more years.
5.4.
Yeah,
3 years.
There's not a lot of teams lining up to take that the way he's played the last couple, which is unfortunate, because when he first broke into the season, I mean, him and Shesterkin came in at the exact same time, kind of right before COVID too.
Yeah,
and he was really, really good, really good. And then obviously there was that situation with I'm blanking on his name.
I know who you mean.
The goaltending prospect who passed away, Matisse Kavelniks, I think is his name. And apparently they were really close, and he kind of hasn't been the same ever since. So, I mean, I'm pulling for the kid. I hope he gets his game back. It's in there somewhere, obviously. He showed it once upon a time, so hopefully at some point he can show up for the Blue Jackets.
Could just be a change of scenery. He's got a modified no trade, so 10 teams, no trade list, so maybe he waives that. Who knows?
Well, there's a handful of teams that still could use a goaltender out there.
Yeah, according to Marty Biron, some of them in the Atlantic Division.
Well, who's going to be the starter in Detroit? He had Cam Talbot at number 8 in Detroit. They've got like 4 guys who could start for them. None of them you could argue is like the forefront, but you got Cam Talbot, Alex Lyon, Ville Husso. They signed Jack Campbell too, who spent time as a starter in the league.
Right.
Like, that's going to be an interesting stable.
I mean, he's on an NHL contract, but I think that's an AHL thing where they're pretty sure he'll clear waivers.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of those situations though where if you've got 4, you've got none?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm
Where did we hear that before? If you have 2, you've got none.
I think we were talking about quarterbacks. Yeah, we were talking about with was it Mike? No, it was Lombardi.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He said if you've got
Michael
2, you've got none.
Yeah. Is that a Steelers conversation?
That's
I
right.
think it was.
We were talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation. Not great.
Yeah.
I like that. If you got 2, you've got none.
Yeah.
You just need 1.
Although you look back a couple of times, the Green Bay Packers, they had 2.
Yeah.
They were all great. They were
Very
all pretty
true.
good. Going in from Favre into Rodgers, a little overlap. Rodgers into Love, overlap.
And while we're on
Sometimes it
that,
works.
the Broncos named Bo Nix their starting quarterback, and Russell Wilson plans to play the preseason finale in Detroit for the Steelers.
Still got to prove himself.
There's a lot of look, he's not proving himself. Russell Wilson, it's not happening. But Bo Nix, AB, I'm curious about your take, because I'm reading a lot of stuff out of Denver.
Yeah.
There is, real euphoria out of Denver. Sean Payton is thrilled with the way things are going in Denver. The defense looks good, and there seems to be some belief that Bo Nix could be legit.
I like Bo Nix. I don't know why I have this memory of him when he was in Auburn, way back when. He came out of Oregon when he got drafted, but he was 18-year-old starting for Auburn, and he was a really good quarterback. He had a couple of big-time victories, and I remember thinking, wow, that's a good player. And then he didn't really do anything for a couple of seasons, and last year really kind of came back on with the Oregon Ducks. And he ended up going in the first round. He was like 12th, 13th overall or something, and beats out Jarrett Stidham. Wasn't a hard guy to beat out for that quarterback competition. But I watched that first game he played against the Indianapolis Colts, my Indianapolis Colts, and he was good. I got to tell you, the way that he can zip the ball, he got good ball placement, he's got good feel in the pocket, he can run a little bit. Bo Mix, I think he's a decent quarterback. I think he'll be all right this year.
You know what? I think we could squeeze in a yes guy, no guy in the next segment. I think we can. On the way out,
yes
Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Overdrive continues on TSN 4, streaming online, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. Overdrive, Jim Tatti, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star, Al's brother, and now Cologne man Josh is in studio. Doogie is in studio because we're going to do this. Oh, guy.
Yes, guy. No, guy.
A misfire. Never happens. Never happens.
Where's the pen throw? We get the pen throw coming?
No. We're on television, kid. Don't need any evidence.
How many colognes today, Doug?
Just one, actually. I think this week is top.
You smell a little tame today.
Yeah.
A little tame.
It's a little tamed.
Yeah.
If anybody would know.
All of you have taught me throughout the week. It's been the conversation around here. It's been floating in the hallways.
Yeah. I don't think I like it.
Got some winks at me. There's like, you smell
Whoa.
Some winks at you.
Whoa. No, guy. Don't go there.
Mrs. Doogie's listening
no.
here, guys.
Yes.
No.
Come on, guy.
No, don't. Oh, bad move. Oh, that hurts.
What do we got? What do we got on tap?
Oh, you're killing me. Go ahead. Yes, guy. Oh, wait.
All right.
Wait, did I do the? I did the intro. Go ahead.
You got it.
Go ahead.
So the Toronto Blue Jays coming off a massive victory, 5 home runs in 5 innings, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was at the forefront of that. Didn't hit a home run, but had a pretty solid game. And on the field, we'll want to see him a little bit more. And a conversation online has been around his position play and where he's going to play on the field. And a lot of buzz has come from, will he become an everyday third baseman for this franchise? So yes guy, no guy, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. should be the Blue Jays' third baseman every day next season for the Jays.
Ooh, well, I'm going to go yes guy. And the only reason I'm going to say it is because I've been there and I've watched him play first base. I don't recall ever seeing anybody, with all due respect, that athletic at first base. I mean, he can go down on the one shin and do the splits and make that catch, and you go, well, that's great at first base, but that could be used somewhere else. I mean, he's got an athleticism, is what I'm trying to say, that should be used elsewhere. So I'm going to go yes guy.
You know, it's an interesting conversation just because, well, he obviously came into the majors as a third baseman. They tried this before, and it didn't work, unfortunately, and so they moved him over to first base. But he was not as athletic, to your point, Tatti, at that point. Now that he's dropped a couple LBs, getting cut, getting ripped, maybe he's in a little bit better shape where he can get to those balls a little easier.
Flexible.
He's still taking some reps at third base. We've seen him in a couple of games here. He has done it. What's the question? He's going to be the everyday third baseman?
He'll be the Blue Jays' everyday third baseman.
I'll no guy that one.
You don't like the wording.
Not every day. Will he get some reps here and there? You know, if whoever ends up being their third baseman, whether, you know, maybe Will Wagner will get a shot at third base. Maybe it'll end up being Leo
Wags.
Whoever ends up being Wags, your guy. He will not be their everyday third baseman. He will continue to be their everyday first baseman.
Yeah, it's a no guy for me, too. I mean, we heard John Schneider talk about it a few months ago, how, you know, their view of Vladdy as the third baseman is he could play there, what is it, a couple days out of every week and a half?
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, you're playing 2 out of 10 days, 2 out of 8 games, 2 out of 9 games, 1 every 4. Like, he's shown no ability to be an everyday fielder. And I think in a lot of ways, if you do that to him, you would miscast him as an everyday fielder. You put too much pressure on him, wear and tear, you know, potential for disaster as a defensive player.
Absolutely.
But I know why he's angling for that, or why those who are in his corner would be angling for that, because you get paid more.
Yeah.
You get paid more if you're an everyday infielder than if you're a DH or, you know, or anything else. And that's as clear as day. Like this conversation has arisen because he's up for a big deal.
How about a Gold Glover at first base a couple of years ago, though? Like, he's found a spot. I don't know why you'd move him off of that.
Yeah. We'll do a quick one here, and we heard the clip. We played it at the start of the show with Daryl Doucette, the flag football player, claiming that he's better than Patrik Mahomes.
Has a better IQ.
And has a better IQ than Patrik Mahomes, and that coincides with the flag football in 2028 in the Olympics. So yes guy, no guy. Let's do a whole Chiefs question here. The Chiefs should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl this season.
Oh, yes, guy. I mean, not only should they be, They are. I mean, like every Vegas book, if I'm not mistaken, House Brother, every Vegas book that I've taken a look at, and all the local ones and the international
FanDuel.
ones,
Our friends at FanDuel.
our good pals at FanDuel, and on down the line has them installed as the favorite. And guess what? They should be the favorite because, hey, I don't know about Mr. Flag Football's flag football IQ, but when it comes to real football IQ and real football clutch performance, there's nobody better. There's nobody comparable to number 15 in the red and gold, and that is why they are the favorites, because Mahomes has no peer.
Yeah. I mean, yes, guy. They should be the favorites. 100%. You're the best till you're not, right? To beat the champs, to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. And like right now on FanDuel, they're both plus 600, them and the 49ers. So go favorites as of now. And to me, the Chiefs are the team to beat for sure.
Yeah, we call this when we do this when I play the game, no brainer, yes guy, no guy, because it's yes guy. They are the favorites.
That's a good choice.
They're the defending champs, and
they should be
until they lose. They're the champs. So sort of a feeble ending to things. Sorry, guy.
They're very stacked.
Yeah. Okay. Coming up in the next hour, Matthew Shinetti, our TSN CFL and TSN sideline reporter, will be by to talk about Chad Kelly's return on Thursday night, tomorrow night against Saskatchewan at BMO Field with the X Open. Later on, fantasy football with Mike Wright, co-host of the Fantasy Footballers podcast. All that coming up next as Overdrive continues on TSN 1050 and now moving from TSN 4 over to TSN 2.